The first gunshot cracked across Riverside University's graduation ceremony at exactly 2:15 p.m. I know because I was watching from the maintenance shed when the shooter opened fire on families celebrating their children's achievements. Within 60 seconds, multiple armed gunmen had taken positions across campus, turning what should have been the happiest day of these students' lives into a coordinated massacre. That's when Tommy Sullivan, the useless old groundskeeper, became Chief Petty Officer Sullivan, SEAL Team 6, back on active duty. My name is Thomas Ghost Sullivan, and this is the day I stopped hiding from who I used to be. But the campus shooting was just the beginning. What nobody knew, not the gunmen, not the police, not even the FBI, was that this attack wasn't random. And the biggest shock wasn't that an elderly groundskeeper could still fight like a Navy SEAL. It was discovering that someone had been studying me for months, planning this attack specifically to draw me out of hiding and finish a job they'd started 30 years ago in a place called Somalia. Graduation day at Riverside University, May 15th, 2024. 23,000 students, faculty, families, and friends gathered on the main quad for commencement ceremonies. The largest crowd the campus had seen all year, and definitely the happiest, until 2:15 p.m. turned celebration into carnage. I'd been working the grounds crew since 6 a.m., making sure the landscaping looked perfect for the families who'd traveled from around the world to watch their children graduate. 8 years of maintaining these 400 acres had taught me every building, every pathway, every hiding spot, and every tactical advantage the campus offered. At 71 years old, wearing faded work clothes and pushing a maintenance cart filled with hedge trimmers and fertilizer, I was completely invisible to the thousands of people celebrating around me. Just another piece of campus equipment as essential as the sprinkler system and just as noticed. "Tommy, you missed a spot by the library steps," called out Brad Hendricks, the 28-year-old facilities supervisor who treated me like a relic from the Stone Age. "Make sure you get that cleaned up before the ceremony starts." I nodded and shuffled toward the library with the slow, careful gait that everyone associated with Slow Tommy. What Brad didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the shuffling old man with the hedge trimmers was once Chief Petty Officer Thomas Sullivan, SEAL Team 6, with 127 confirmed kills across 3 decades of classified operations. But that was a different life, with a different uniform, serving different objectives. That Tommy Sullivan had died in Mogadishu in 1993 during a mission that was supposed to be routine reconnaissance but turned into a nightmare that Hollywood had tried to capture in Black Hawk Down but had gotten mostly wrong. This Tommy Sullivan was just a groundskeeper who said, "Yes, sir," to supervisors young enough to be his grandchildren, and pretended that trimming bushes was fulfilling work for a man who'd once been considered one of the most lethal operators in the U.S. military. The transition from active duty to civilian life had been brutal. 30 years of military service, from Vietnam as an 18-year-old sailor to classified operations that didn't officially exist. And then suddenly I was expected to be a normal person with normal concerns like mortgage payments and healthcare premiums. PTSD, survivor's guilt, chronic pain from injuries that couldn't be discussed because the missions were classified, all the standard veteran problems, but magnified by 3 decades of being what the Navy called a force multiplier. One man who could do the work of an entire squad when the situation required it. The university job had been perfect for someone who needed to disappear from the world while staying busy enough to avoid thinking too much about the past. Physical work, minimal human interaction, and a campus full of young people who were focused on their futures instead of dwelling on old wars. For 8 years, I'd been content to be invisible, forgotten, irrelevant. But invisibility can be a tactical advantage when the situation changes from peaceful to hostile in 60 seconds. At 2:14 p.m., I was trimming hedges near the maintenance shed, positioned with a clear view of the graduation ceremony while staying out of everyone's way. Perfect spot for someone who preferred to observe rather than participate. At 2:15 p.m., everything changed. The first shot came from the bell tower, a high-powered rifle that took out the university president mid-sentence during his opening remarks. The second and third shots came from the library roof, targeting security personnel who might have responded to the initial attack. But those weren't random shots. They were precision eliminations designed to decapitate leadership and security response while creating maximum psychological impact on the crowd. Professional work from shooters who understood tactical coordination. Within 30 seconds, I'd identified at least 6 different firing positions across campus. This wasn't a lone gunman having a breakdown. This was a coordinated military-style assault designed to maximize casualties while minimizing the attacker's exposure to return fire. The crowd was in full panic mode. Students, families, faculty, and staff running in every direction, screaming, crying, trampling each other in their desperation to escape. Chaos that would make it impossible for law enforcement to distinguish between victims and threats when they finally arrived. But chaos can also provide cover for someone who knows how to move tactically through hostile territory. I dropped my hedge trimmers and accessed the emergency radio frequency that connected all campus security personnel. The chatter was exactly what I'd expected: confusion, panic, and no clear leadership or coordination. All units, we have active shooters in multiple locations. Repeat, multiple shooters, multiple locations. Requesting immediate backup from city police and county sheriff. Multiple locations meant this was planned and coordinated. Professional execution meant military or paramilitary training. Timing during graduation meant maximum casualties and media coverage. This wasn't terrorism for political purposes. This was terrorism for psychological warfare, designed to create the kind of footage that would dominate news cycles and inspire copycat attacks. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They'd assumed that everyone on campus would be a victim instead of a defender. They hadn't planned on facing someone who'd spent 30 years learning how to turn any environment into a battleground where professional killers could be hunted and eliminated. I keyed the security frequency and used a voice I hadn't used in 8 years. The command voice of a Navy SEAL who'd coordinated operations in environments much more hostile than a university campus. All security units, this is Sullivan. I'm taking tactical command of campus defense. If you want to save lives instead of just documenting casualties, you'll follow my instructions exactly. The silence that followed told me they'd never heard the campus groundskeeper speak with authority, with the absolute certainty of someone who'd made similar decisions under similar circumstances. Campus Security Chief Janet Morrison came back first. "Tommy, what are you talking about? You're not in charge of anything." "Chief Morrison, in about 3 minutes you're going to understand why sometimes experience matters more than rank. Right now you have two choices: coordinate with me to stop this massacre, or watch thousands of people die while you worry about chain of command." Through the chaos and gunfire, I could see the tactical situation developing across the 400-acre campus. The shooters were positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that would funnel fleeing civilians toward kill zones where maximum casualties could be inflicted with minimum risk to the attackers. Standard terrorist playbook, adapted for an American university campus. Professional planning, military-style execution, designed to create the kind of mass casualty event that would generate weeks of media coverage and inspire similar attacks nationwide. But every terrorist operation has vulnerabilities if you know how to identify and exploit them. I'd spent 3 decades doing exactly that. Time to find out if a 71-year-old groundskeeper still remembered how to be a Navy SEAL. The maintenance shed where I'd been working contained more than hedge trimmers and fertilizer. After 8 years of campus employment, I'd gradually accumulated equipment that most groundskeepers wouldn't need. High-powered binoculars, tactical flashlights, emergency medical supplies, and communications gear that could monitor police and emergency service frequencies. Call it paranoia, call it professional habit, call it the survival instincts of someone who'd lived through too many surprise attacks to ever be completely unprepared. The gear had been there for 8 years, just in case. Today was the case. Through the binoculars, I could see the full scope of the assault developing across campus. Bell Tower, Position 1. Sniper with high-powered rifle, approximately 300 yards from the ceremony area. professional positioning for maximum psychological impact and optimal fields of fire. Estimated 500 plus rounds of ammunition based on equipment visible. Library roof, position 2. Two shooters with assault rifles covering the main evacuation routes from the quad. Coordinated fire designed to prevent organized evacuation and funnel people toward kill zones. Student Union Building, Position 3. Shooter positioned to control the central campus area, preventing movement between buildings and isolating different groups of potential victims. Athletics Complex, Position 4. Gunmen covering the parking areas where people would try to reach vehicles for escape. Engineering Building, Position 5. Elevated position controlling the eastern campus area, cutting off access to emergency services staging areas. Administration Building, Position 6. Shooter positioned to eliminate university leadership and prevent coordinated official response. 6 confirmed positions, probably more that I hadn't identified yet. Professional coordination, military-style positioning, designed to create a 360-degree kill zone that would trap everyone on campus while maximizing casualties. But I'd seen similar setups before, in Mogadishu, Fallujah, and a dozen other places where American soldiers had faced coordinated attacks from multiple directions. The key to defeating coordinated assaults is disrupting their coordination. Take out their communications, eliminate their leadership, create chaos in their ranks while organizing resistance among the defenders. I switched to the campus emergency frequency and began coordinating with the few security personnel who hadn't panicked or been eliminated in the initial attack. Chief Morrison, what's your current position? Administration building, second floor, trapped with about 40 faculty members. Can you see the shooter on your building? He's on the roof, maybe 30 feet above us. The administration building shooter was the command element positioned to coordinate the other 5 positions while eliminating university leadership. Take him out first, and the other shooters would lose coordination. Chief Morrison, that's your target. Find a way to reach the roof and neutralize that threat. Tommy, I'm not trained for combat. I'm a campus security chief, not a soldier. Right now, you're whatever the situation requires you to be. And right now, it requires you to be someone who can save 40 lives by eliminating one threat. But Chief Morrison wasn't the only campus employee who needed to remember that some situations demand more than job descriptions allow. Professor Martinez, are you monitoring this frequency? Dr. Alina Martinez, the university's emergency management coordinator and former Army logistics officer, came back immediately. I'm here, Tommy. I'm in the engineering building with about 60 students. Ma'am, what's the tactical situation in your building? One shooter on the roof, controlling the eastern campus approach. But Tommy, how do you know about tactical situations? Because 30 years ago, I was the guy who taught other special operations units how to assess and respond to exactly this kind of coordinated assault. Because I've been in firefights where the survival of entire units depended on accurate tactical assessment and rapid response. Because I know the difference between random violence and professional military operations. But there wasn't time for explanations. Professor Martinez, your military background gives you the experience to understand what I'm about to tell you. This isn't a random shooting, it's a coordinated assault with professional planning and execution. These shooters have military or paramilitary training, and they're executing a plan designed to maximize casualties while minimizing their own exposure. How can you tell? Because I've seen this exact tactical setup before, and I know how to defeat it. The radio crackled with confused voices from other campus personnel. Tommy, what are you talking about? How do you know about military tactics? Who put you in charge? I switched to the all-campus emergency frequency and broadcast to every employee, student, and faculty member who had access to university communications. All campus personnel, this is Thomas Sullivan, former Navy SEAL Team 6, currently employed as groundskeeper. For the next however long this takes, I'm your tactical coordinator. If you want to survive this attack and save as many lives as possible, you'll follow my instructions exactly. The silence that followed was longer than I'd expected, but when the responses came, they carried a different tone, not confusion or disbelief, but the focused attention of people who'd realized their survival depended on trusting someone who seemed to know what he was doing. Chief Morrison came back first. Chief Sullivan, what do you need us to do? Chief Morrison, coordinate with Professor Martinez to establish communication with all building coordinators. I need to know how many people are trapped in each location and what resources they have available for defense. Defense? Asked Dr. Martinez. You mean we're going to fight back? Ma'am, we're going to do more than fight back. We're going to turn this campus into a fortress and hunt down every one of these shooters. Through the binoculars, I could see the situation deteriorating rapidly. The initial panic had scattered people throughout the campus, but now they were being systematically hunted by shooters who were moving with coordinated precision. The Bell Tower sniper was providing overwatch for ground-level shooters who were moving building to building, executing anyone they found. Professional sweep-and-clear tactics, adapted for civilian targets who had no training in defensive procedures. But not everyone on campus was a helpless civilian. Professor Kim, are you monitoring this frequency? Dr. James Kim, the ROTC commander and former Marine captain, responded immediately. Roger, Chief Sullivan. I'm in the ROTC building with 23 cadets and approximately 40 other students. What's your defensive capability, Professor? We have training weapons, emergency supplies, and cadets with basic military training, but no live ammunition. Training weapons wouldn't stop bullets, but they might stop untrained attackers who couldn't tell the difference in high-stress situations. More importantly, the ROTC cadets represented the closest thing to trained personnel I had available. Professor Kim, I need your cadets to coordinate evacuation and defense operations throughout campus. They have training that could save hundreds of lives if properly employed. Sir, these are college students, not combat veterans. Professor, 30 years ago I was an 18-year-old sailor with 6 months of training when I got thrown into combat operations. Your cadets have more training than most soldiers had in Vietnam. Trust them to do what they've been trained to do. But as I coordinated with the few military-trained personnel on campus, I began to notice something that made my old combat instincts scream warnings. The shooters weren't just randomly killing people. They were documenting their attack with professional-grade video equipment, creating footage that would be used for propaganda purposes. This wasn't just terrorism. It was a media event designed to generate maximum psychological impact. And somewhere among the chaos and carnage, someone was coordinating the documentation while staying safely away from the actual combat, which meant this operation had external support and command authority that extended beyond the campus. I was about to discover that the attack on Riverside University was just the opening phase of something much larger, much more dangerous, and much more personal than a random campus shooting. But first, I had 2,000 innocent people to keep alive while hunting down 6 professional killers who thought they were facing helpless civilians. Time to show them what happened when they picked a fight with the wrong groundskeeper. The Bell Tower sniper had to be eliminated first. His elevated position gave him overwatch of the entire campus and the ability to provide tactical coordination for the other 5 shooters. Take out the eyes of the operation, and the rest would be operating blind. But getting to the Bell Tower meant crossing 200 yards of open ground while under observation from multiple hostile positions. In normal circumstances, that would be suicide for anyone without backup and supporting fire. Fortunately, 8 years of campus maintenance had given me advantages that the shooters couldn't have anticipated. The utility tunnel system that connected major buildings across campus was designed for maintenance access and emergency services. Most people didn't know it existed. Those who did know assumed it was just for pipes and electrical work. But a tunnel system that could carry utilities could also carry one Navy SEAL with 30 years of experience in urban warfare. I accessed the tunnel entrance near the maintenance shed, using keys that I'd carried for 8 years but never expected to use tactically. The tunnels were cramped, dark, and filled with infrastructure that made movement slow and difficult. Perfect conditions for someone who'd spent 3 decades learning to move unseen through hostile territory. The tunnel system brought me to within 50 feet of the Bell Tower's base, emerging in the basement of the adjacent music building. From there, I could approach the tower using concealment techniques that hadn't changed since my active duty days. But as I moved through the tunnels, my radio crackled with updates from across campus that painted an increasingly grim picture. Chief Sullivan, this is Professor Martinez. We've lost contact with the Student Union building. The last transmission said approximately 150 students and faculty were trapped inside. Chief Morrison here. The administration building shooter is moving floor to floor, systematically executing anyone he finds. We're running out of places to hide. Professor Kim reporting. My cadets have established defensive positions, but we're seeing coordinated movement by multiple shooters. They're not operating independently, they're following a coordinated plan. Coordinated plan meant professional command and control, but professional operations also meant predictable tactics that could be disrupted by someone who understood military planning. I reached the bell tower basement and began the climb to the top, 14 floors of narrow stairwell, moving as quietly as possible while the sniper above continued his work of terrorizing 2,000 innocent people. But as I climbed, I could hear something through my earpiece that changed the entire tactical situation. A voice speaking with a slight accent, coordinating the attack with the precision of someone who'd done this before. Position 1. Maintain overwatch and eliminate any organized resistance. Position 2. Sweep the library building floor by floor. Position 3. Secure the student union and prepare documentation equipment. Documentation equipment. They weren't just killing people, they were creating propaganda footage. But the voice was familiar. Not someone I recognized immediately, but someone whose vocal patterns, cadence, and tactical terminology reminded me of operations I'd conducted 30 years ago. Somalia, Mogadishu, October 1993. The mission that had officially ended my career and unofficially started a 30-year hunt for American Special Operations personnel who'd survived when they weren't supposed to survive. I'd thought that chapter of my life was closed. I thought the enemies I'd made in Africa had forgotten about Chief Petty Officer Thomas Sullivan. I'd been wrong. Ghost 6, this is Control. We have confirmation that the primary target is on campus and actively engaged. Proceed to Phase 2 of operation. Ghost 6, my old call sign from SEAL Team 6 operations. Someone had done their research, learned my operational history, and planned this attack specifically to draw me out of hiding. This wasn't a random campus shooting. This was a trap, 30 years in the making, designed to finish a job that had started in the streets of Mogadishu when I'd done things that weren't supposed to be remembered by anyone who'd survived them. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They'd assumed that 30 years of civilian life had made me soft, slow, vulnerable to the kind of psychological warfare they specialized in. They were about to discover that some skills don't fade with age, and some soldiers never really retire from war. I reached the bell tower observation deck and found exactly what I'd expected. A professional sniper with military-grade equipment positioned for maximum tactical advantage and minimum exposure to return fire. What I hadn't expected was the small camera mounted next to his rifle scope, broadcasting live footage of his kills to whoever was coordinating this operation. They weren't just documenting the attack, they were live streaming it. The sniper was so focused on his targets below that he didn't notice the basement access door opening behind him until I was close enough to reach out and touch him. Afternoon, I said quietly. Time to clock out. He started to turn, reaching for a sidearm, but 30 years of combat experience moved faster than 20-something reflexes. The engagement was quick, professional, and completely decisive. One down, 5 to go. But as I secured his equipment, I found something that confirmed my worst fears. A target list with photographs and detailed information about every military veteran working on campus. They hadn't just researched me. They'd identified every former soldier, sailor, marine, and airman employed by Riverside University, along with their specialties, background, and potential threat level. This wasn't just about eliminating Thomas Sullivan. This was about testing American civilian defenses by targeting the exact people most capable of organizing resistance to terrorist attacks. My radio crackled with Professor Martinez's voice. Chief Sullivan, we're seeing movement by multiple shooters converging on the ROTC building. They seem to be targeting military personnel specifically. Copy that. Professor Kim, what's your status? We're under direct assault by at least 3 shooters. They're not trying to take hostages, they're trying to eliminate anyone with military training. The tactical picture was becoming clear. Phase 1 had been mass casualties to create chaos and media coverage. Phase 2 was the systematic elimination of anyone capable of organizing effective resistance. Phase 3 would probably be escape and evasion, while law enforcement dealt with the aftermath of the largest campus shooting in American history. But they'd forgotten something important about military planning. Every operation has assumptions, and when those assumptions prove incorrect, the entire plan falls apart. Their assumption was that I'd remain hidden until they could find and eliminate me, along with the other veterans on campus. Their assumption was wrong. Instead of hiding, I was going to hunt. Instead of waiting for them to find me, I was going to find them first. And instead of being a target in their operation, I was going to turn their coordinated assault into their coordinated elimination. Time to show them why SEAL Team 6 had never lost a man when Chief Petty Officer Sullivan was providing tactical support. I keyed my radio to the all-campus frequency. All units, this is Sullivan. I've neutralized the bell tower sniper and secured his equipment. Professor Kim, your building is the next priority target. All other personnel, prepare for coordinated defense operations. We're not running from these shooters anymore, we're hunting them. Through the sniper scope, I could see the other 5 shooters adjusting their positions in response to the loss of their overwatch. They were still coordinating, still following their plan, but now they were operating without their tactical advantage. And they were about to discover that a 71-year-old groundskeeper with SEAL Team 6 experience could turn any campus into a very dangerous place for professional killers who'd made the mistake of threatening American students. The bell tower position gave me overwatch of the entire 400-acre campus. Perfect position for someone who needed to coordinate defensive operations while hunting targets who thought they were the hunters. From this elevation, I could see everything. The positions of the remaining shooters, the locations of trapped civilians, the approach routes that law enforcement would use when they finally arrived, and most importantly, the tactical vulnerabilities that could be exploited to turn this massacre into a counterattack. But I could also see something else that made my blood run cold. Unmarked vehicles positioned around the campus perimeter, obviously providing external support and coordination for the attack. This operation had backup, resources, and command authority that extended far beyond 6 gunmen with rifles. I was facing something much more dangerous than a terrorist attack. I was facing what looked like a military operation conducted by foreign assets on American soil. But they'd picked the wrong target, the wrong campus, and the wrong day to test American resolve. Because today, Chief Petty Officer Thomas, Ghost, Sullivan was back on active duty, and Ghost 6 had never failed a mission. From the bell tower, I had a commanding view of the entire tactical situation developing across campus. The 5 remaining shooters were moving with professional coordination, but losing their overwatch had disrupted their ability to maintain situational awareness of the broader battlefield. Military advantage. When you can see everything and your enemy can only see their immediate area, you can coordinate attacks they can't anticipate or counter. I established communications with all military-trained personnel on campus and began coordinating what the Navy would call a distributed defense operation, using multiple small units to create interlocking fields of fire and mutual support. Professor Kim, what's your current tactical situation? We're holding the ROTC building, but we're under sustained assault by 3 shooters. My cadets are performing well, but we don't have the firepower to go on the offensive. You don't need firepower, you need coordination. Stand by for tactical support. Through the captured sniper scope, I could see the 3 shooters advancing on the ROTC building. They were moving with professional discipline, using cover and concealment, maintaining communication with their command element. But they were also following predictable assault patterns that any military-trained observer could anticipate. I keyed the radio. Professor Kim, The three hostiles are approaching your building from the southeast, using the landscaping for concealment. In 30 seconds, they'll be in position to breach your main entrance. How can you possibly know that? Because I'm watching them through a sniper scope from the bell tower. In 20 seconds, I want your cadets to exit through the northwest emergency door and establish a defensive perimeter. The hostiles will breach the southeast entrance and find an empty building. And then they'll be trapped inside a building while you control the exits from outside. Classic reversal, turn the hunters into the hunted. The maneuver executed exactly as planned. The three shooters breached the ROTC building, expecting to find 40 trapped students and faculty. Instead, they found an empty building while 23 ROTC cadets surrounded them from outside. Professor Kim, you now have three hostiles trapped in your building. Coordinate with campus security to maintain the perimeter while I deal with the other positions. But as I prepared to move against the library shooters, my radio crackled with a voice I'd hoped never to hear again. Chief Petty Officer Sullivan, this is Colonel Dmitry Volkov, formerly of the Soviet Spetsnaz, currently coordinating this operation. It's been 30 years since Mogadishu, but some debts never expire. Mogadishu, October 1993. The mission that had officially been about capturing a warlord, but had actually been about eliminating Soviet military advisors who were training Somali fighters in anti-American tactics. Colonel Volkov had been the senior Soviet officer in country, and I'd been the Navy SEAL assigned to find and eliminate him. The mission had been successful. Officially, Volkov had died in the fighting that surrounded the Battle of Mogadishu. Unofficially, he'd escaped, and he'd spent 30 years planning revenge against the American Special Operations units that had destroyed his operation. Colonel, I replied, I seem to remember putting 3 rounds center mass into your chest in a compound outside Mogadishu. Either Soviet body armor was better than we thought, or you're remarkably resilient. Kevlar vest, an immediate medical evacuation, Chief. But you killed 17 of my men that day, including my executive officer who'd served with me since Afghanistan. Some debts require personal collection. The tactical picture suddenly made complete sense. This wasn't just terrorism for propaganda purposes. This was a personal vendetta, 30 years in the making, designed to eliminate the American Special Operations personnel who'd survived missions that were supposed to stay classified forever. So you researched every veteran working at this university, planned a coordinated assault to draw me out, and orchestrated the massacre of 2,000 innocent students just to settle a 30-year-old grudge. Not just to settle a grudge, Chief. To demonstrate that American Special Operations personnel are not the invincible warriors your propaganda suggests. When the world sees footage of Ghost 6 being eliminated by superior tactics and planning, it will inspire similar operations against American targets worldwide. Psychological warfare. They weren't just trying to kill me. They were trying to create propaganda footage that would show American military heroes being defeated by foreign operatives. But they'd made the same mistake that every enemy I'd faced in 30 years of operations had made. They'd assumed that individual combat skills mattered more than tactical coordination and resource utilization. I wasn't fighting this battle alone. I had allies, resources, and advantages that Volkov hadn't anticipated. Colonel, there's something you should know about American universities. What's that, Chief? They're full of Americans, and Americans don't surrender to foreign invaders regardless of how carefully you've planned your operation. I switched back to the campus coordination frequency. All units, this is Sullivan. We're not dealing with random shooters, we're dealing with a coordinated assault by foreign military personnel. This is an act of war disguised as domestic terrorism. The response was immediate and exactly what I'd expected from Americans who'd realized their country was under attack. Professor Martinez here. What do you need us to do? Chief Morrison standing by for orders. Professor Kim ready to coordinate with ROTC cadets. Maintenance staff ready to assist with technical support. Campus police prepared for tactical operations. Even the students were monitoring the frequency. This is Student Government President Sarah Chen. We have about 300 students in secure locations throughout campus. How can we help? That's what Volkov had miscalculated. He'd planned an operation based on the assumption that Americans would panic, flee, and abandon each other when faced with coordinated violence. Instead, he was facing an entire university community that had decided to fight back. All units, phase 2 of our operation begins now. We're going from defense to offense. Professor Martinez, coordinate evacuation of non-essential personnel through the tunnel systems. Professor Kim, your cadets are going to conduct building-to-building clearance operations. Chief Morrison, you're coordinating with city police when they arrive. And what are you going to do? Asked Professor Martinez. I'm going to have a personal conversation with Colonel Volkov about the difference between planning operations and executing them successfully. Through the sniper scope, I could see Volkov's command vehicle, one of the unmarked SUVs positioned at the campus perimeter. Professional setup with communications equipment, tactical coordination capability, and escape routes prepared in advance. But he'd positioned himself within range of the bell tower, probably because he wanted to observe the execution of his revenge personally. Tactical mistake. When you want to watch your enemy die, you sometimes position yourself where your enemy can watch you die. I made the necessary adjustments to the captured sniper rifle and prepared to demonstrate something that every SEAL learns early in their career: the difference between planning to kill someone and actually being able to do it. Colonel Volkov had spent 30 years planning revenge against Ghost 6. Ghost 6 had spent 30 years perfecting the skills that had made him legendary in the special operations community. Time to find out which mattered more: careful planning or professional execution. But as I lined up the shot, my radio crackled with updates from across campus that told me the situation was more complicated than a simple sniper engagement. Chief Sullivan, we're seeing additional hostile vehicles approaching from multiple directions. This isn't just 6 shooters, this is a battalion-strength operation. Battalion strength meant 300-500 enemy personnel. Even with tactical advantages and campus knowledge, I couldn't defeat that many professional soldiers with the resources currently available, which meant this was about to escalate from a campus shooting to a full-scale military assault on American civilians. But escalation worked both ways. I keyed my radio to a frequency that I hadn't used in 8 years, but that would be monitored 24/7 by people who understood the difference between domestic emergencies and acts of war. Mayday, Mayday, this is Chief Petty Officer Thomas Sullivan, SEAL Team 6, retired. I am currently engaged with foreign military forces conducting coordinated assault on American civilians at Riverside University, Oklahoma. Request immediate tactical support and air cover. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The response came back within 30 seconds. Chief Sullivan, this is Colonel Bradley Matthews, U.S. Army Special Operations Command. We have your position and are monitoring the situation. F-16 fighters are inbound, ETA 12 minutes. Can you hold until support arrives? Affirmative, Colonel. But be advised, we're facing battalion-strength opposition with professional military training and coordination. Understood, Chief. The cavalry is coming. Through the scope, I could see Volkov's reaction to the approach of additional vehicles. He was coordinating something that looked like a full-scale assault preparation, probably designed to overrun the campus before American military support could arrive. But he'd forgotten something important about American universities. They're not just filled with students and faculty. They're filled with Americans who've decided that some fights are worth having, regardless of the odds. And today, Riverside University was going to teach Colonel Volkov and his battalion the same lesson that Americans have been teaching foreign invaders for over 200 years. This is our country, these are our people, this is our home, and we don't surrender. The first wave of Volkov's reinforcements hit the campus perimeter at 3:47 p.m., approximately 150 personnel in military-style vehicles, moving with the coordinated precision of a professional assault force. They weren't trying to be subtle anymore. They were conducting a full-scale military operation on American soil. But they were also operating under a critical misunderstanding about American civilian response to foreign invasion. Through the radio, I could monitor their tactical communications. They were speaking in Russian, but 30 years of military operations had taught me enough to understand their coordination and objectives. Dimitri Actual, this is Alpha Company. We have secured the southern perimeter and are moving to eliminate remaining resistance. Bravo Company reports eastern perimeter secure, beginning building-to-building clearance. Charlie Company has neutralized campus security at the main gate. No organized resistance detected. No organized resistance detected. That was their first mistake. I switched back to our campus coordination frequency. All units, we now have approximately 150 foreign military personnel conducting assault operations on our campus. This is no longer about surviving a shooting. This is about defending American territory from invasion. The response told me everything I needed to know about the character of the people I was working with. Professor Martinez here. We have 127 faculty and staff in secure positions throughout campus. What are your orders? Student Government President Chen reporting. We have 400 plus students in defensive positions. We're ready to fight. Professor Kim coordinating with ROTC cadets. We have 23 trained personnel ready for combat operations. Chief Morrison with campus security. We're outgunned but not outfought. That's what Colonel Volkov had miscalculated. He'd planned an operation assuming that American civilians would surrender when faced with overwhelming military force. Instead, he was facing an entire university community that had decided to turn their campus into a fortress. But 150 professional soldiers against university personnel was still impossible odds, regardless of determination and tactical coordination, unless you could change the tactical equation. All units, this is Sullivan. We're not going to fight them on their terms, we're going to fight them on ours. Professor Martinez, initiate total campus lockdown. All buildings sealed, all automated systems under our control. Professor Kim, disperse your cadets throughout the campus to coordinate building defense. Every structure becomes a strongpoint. Student Government President Chen, coordinate with all student groups to establish communication networks and supply lines. Chief Morrison, prepare for coordination with incoming federal support. But the most important coordination was going to be between me and the F-16 fighters that were now 8 minutes out from target. Colonel Matthews, this is Sullivan. I need tactical air support coordinated with ground operations. These aren't random terrorists, they're professional military conducting invasion operations. Copy that, Chief. Our pilots are cleared for close air support. Paint targets and we'll eliminate them. Painting targets meant using laser designation to guide precision munitions onto enemy positions. But the laser designator I needed was in the captured sniper equipment from the bell tower. Professional military operations often come down to who has better equipment and who knows how to use it more effectively. I began identifying target priorities across campus. Target Alpha, command vehicle with Colonel Volkov and tactical coordination equipment, target Bravo. Heavy weapons team establishing position near student union target Charlie. Communications array being set up to coordinate with external support target Delta. Assault teams preparing to breach secured buildings, target Echo. Escape routes being prepared for post-operation withdrawal 5 target priorities, with F-16 fighters carrying enough ordnance to eliminate all of them if the coordination was executed properly. But first, I had to keep my campus defenders alive long enough for air support to arrive. The assault teams were moving building to building with professional tactics, but they were also operating under the assumption that they'd face minimal organized resistance. That assumption was about to be corrected. Professor Kim, enemy assault team approaching your position from the northwest. 12 personnel, moving in standard infantry formation. How do you know their formation? Because I'm watching them through professional military optics. In 30 seconds, they'll attempt to breach your southeast entrance. I want your cadets to execute Defensive Plan Alpha. Defensive Plan Alpha was something we discussed during our earlier coordination, a tactical response designed for exactly this scenario. The ROTC cadets executed perfectly. When the assault team breached the southeast entrance, they found defensive positions that had been prepared by people who understood military tactics. The engagement lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, the assault team had been neutralized, and the cadets had captured military-grade equipment that significantly improved their defensive capabilities. Outstanding work, Professor Kim. One enemy squad eliminated, zero friendly casualties. But the successful defense of the ROTC building had attracted attention from Colonel Volkov's command element. Ghost 6, this is Dmitri Actual. Your tactical coordination is impressive, but you're still facing overwhelming odds. I'm prepared to offer terms for surrender. What kind of terms? Safe passage for all students and faculty in exchange for your personal surrender. This operation was designed to eliminate you specifically. Give us what we came for, and the innocents can live. It was a tempting offer. Exchange one 71-year-old groundskeeper for 2,000 young lives. From a utilitarian perspective, it made perfect sense, but it ignored something fundamental about military honor and American values. Colonel, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to decline. Why? Because surrendering to foreign invaders isn't something Americans do. And because in about 4 minutes, you're going to understand why attacking American civilians on American soil is a very poor tactical decision. The F-16 fighters appeared on the horizon at exactly 3:51 p.m., moving at attack speed and carrying enough ordnance to end this invasion attempt permanently. Raptor flight, this is ground control, Sullivan. I have multiple targets painted and ready for engagement. Copy, ground control. Raptor flight has visual on targets. Cleared hot. What happened next lasted approximately 3 minutes and demonstrated why the United States Air Force is considered the most effective tactical air power in the world. Target Alpha, Colonel Volkov's command vehicle, disappeared in a precision strike that eliminated command and control for the entire operation. Target Bravo, the heavy weapons team, was neutralized before they could establish effective firing positions. Target Charlie, the communications array, was destroyed, cutting off coordination with external support. Targets Delta and Echo, the assault teams and escape routes, were systematically eliminated by pilots who understood the difference between surgical strikes and collateral damage. When the airstrikes ended, approximately 130 of Volkov's 150 assault personnel had been eliminated, and the survivors were scattered across campus without coordination, communication, or command authority. But the operation wasn't over yet. I could see Volkov himself moving across campus on foot, apparently having survived the destruction of his command vehicle and now operating with a small team of personal security. He was heading toward the administration building, probably trying to find hostages he could use as leverage for negotiating his escape. That wasn't going to happen. I left the bell tower and began tracking him across campus, using the terrain knowledge I'd gained from 8 years of groundskeeping and the tactical skills I'd developed in 30 years of special operations. Colonel Dmitry Volkov had spent 3 decades planning revenge against Ghost 6, but Ghost 6 had spent 3 decades becoming someone who couldn't be defeated by any plan, regardless of how carefully it was conceived or how professionally it was executed. The final engagement between us lasted exactly 7 minutes and took place in the university president's office, with 2,000 students and faculty listening through the campus radio network as 30 years of unfinished business was finally resolved. When it ended, Colonel Volkov was dead, his remaining personnel were in custody, and Riverside University was secure. But more importantly, 2,000 American students and their families had learned something that every generation needs to understand. Freedom isn't free, security isn't guaranteed, and sometimes ordinary citizens have to do extraordinary things to protect the values that define our country. 6 months after the Battle of Riverside University, as the media had dubbed it, the campus looked almost normal again. Buildings had been repaired, landscaping had been restored, and students were back to worrying about finals and job interviews instead of foreign invasions. But everything was different. I was still working as groundskeeper, but my role had evolved significantly. The university had created a new position for me, Director of Campus Security and Emergency Response. My job was to ensure that no American university would ever again face a coordinated assault without trained defenders ready to respond. More importantly, my job was to identify and train the military veterans who worked in civilian positions throughout American higher education, the quiet professionals who possessed exactly the skills needed to protect academic communities from threats that traditional security couldn't handle. The program we developed became a national model. Universities across the country began identifying and training their veteran employees, creating a network of trained defenders who could coordinate response to everything from natural disasters to terrorist attacks. We called it the Campus Guardian Program, and within a year, over 200 universities had implemented similar systems. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the students, faculty, and staff viewed military service and veteran employment. The same students who'd walked past me for 8 years without acknowledging my existence now stopped to thank me for my service and ask about my experiences. They understood that the invisible older workers on their campus might be more than they seemed. Professor Elena Martinez became my deputy director, coordinating with academic departments to integrate emergency preparedness into university operations. Her Army logistics background made her exactly the kind of administrator needed to manage complex campus security systems. Professor Kim and his ROTC cadets were recognized nationally for their performance during the battle. 3 of the cadets received scholarships to military academies, and the program became a recruitment pipeline for special operations units. Chief Morrison retired from campus security and was hired as a consultant to help other universities develop veteran-integrated security programs. She'd learned that sometimes the best security personnel come from unexpected backgrounds. Sarah Chen, the student government president who'd coordinated student resistance during the battle, graduated with honors and was accepted to law school with a full scholarship. She'd decided to specialize in national security law, inspired by her experience defending her campus from foreign invasion. The memorial garden we planted in honor of the 3 campus security officers who died in the initial attack became a place where students could reflect on the cost of freedom and the importance of civilian readiness. But the most meaningful change was personal. For 30 years, I'd been running from my identity as a Navy SEAL, trying to convince myself that my military service was just ancient history that didn't matter in civilian life. The battle for Riverside University taught me something I should have learned decades earlier. You never really retire from service to your country. You just change uniforms and wait for the next time your experience and skills are needed. Every morning, I still put on work clothes and walk the campus grounds. But now I'm not just maintaining landscaping, I'm maintaining readiness. Every building, every pathway, every tactical position on campus is assessed and prepared for scenarios that I hope will never occur, but know could happen again. Because the lesson of October 1993 in Mogadishu and May 2024 at Riverside University is that America's enemies never stop planning, never stop preparing, and never stop looking for weaknesses they can exploit. But the corresponding lesson is that America's defenders never really retire. They just put on civilian clothes and take civilian jobs while staying ready for the day their country needs them again. My name is Thomas Ghost Sullivan. I'm 72 years old. I'm a university groundskeeper, a Navy SEAL veteran, and a man who learned that some duties never end, they just evolve. The grass still needs to be cut. The hedges still need to be trimmed. The campus still needs to be maintained. But now everyone understands that the groundskeeper who takes care of their university might also be taking care of their security, their safety, and their freedom. Because that's what veterans do. We serve in whatever capacity our community needs, whether that's trimming hedges or eliminating foreign invaders who threaten American students. The watch continues, the mission evolves, but the commitment remains constant to protect and defend, to stay ready when called, to ensure that no attack on American civilians goes unanswered by Americans willing to fight back. This is our campus. This is our community. This is our country. And some of us never really leave the service. We just change our uniform and wait for the next time our training is needed. Welcome to Riverside University, where the groundskeeper might be a Navy SEAL, the professors might be combat veterans, and the students have learned that freedom requires eternal vigilance from citizens willing to defend it. The garden grows, the grass gets cut, the campus stays secure, and Ghost 6 remains on duty 40 years after first taking the oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Some promises never expire. Thank you for reading Tommy Sullivan's story. Thank you for understanding that military service doesn't end with discharge papers. And thank you for recognizing that the real strength of America lies not in our weapons or our military bases, but in the character of our citizens and their willingness to serve when their community needs them. The quiet professionals are all around you, maintaining the infrastructure and security of American life while staying ready for the moment their specialized skills might be needed again. They might be groundskeepers, security guards, janitors, or cafeteria workers. But they're also the veterans who know that some duties transcend job descriptions and that some battles are worth fighting regardless of age or official retirement status. The watch continues, and America sleeps safer because of guardians like Tommy Sullivan who never really stopped serving their country. In memory of all veterans who transition from military to civilian service while never forgetting their oath to defend America and Americans, wherever the threat might come from and whatever form it might take. Their service continues. Their vigil never ends. Their commitment to protecting others makes our communities stronger and our nation more secure. Thank you to every veteran who ever took a civilian job while staying ready to serve again when called. Your quiet professionalism and hidden readiness are the foundation of American security. The mission continues,